One of the other things I'd say just on that point is, and it's mind boggling that, most of the customers and we're talking about large contractors, for example, here, rarely actually measure the performance of their supply chain.
This episode was recorded live at Digital Construction Week at the Excel in London, where I interviewed some of the best and brightest in the built environment for a revealing look at innovation and technology. Neeral Shah is the founder and CEO of YardLink, a B2B marketplace digitizing the $1 trillion construction supply chain. As a former investment banker, it took a move into supply chain finance to discover a real issue. Or opportunity, should I say. A fragmented supply chain and inefficient procurement strategies within construction. With too much resource spent just on getting hold of the right equipment and materials. When Neeral started working at a high-growth tech startup, the catalyst to YardLink was his involvement in digital marketplaces and seeing the power of the network effects. From this point onwards, Neeral knew there was a better digital solution to one of the construction industry's biggest challenges with supply chains. Enter YardLink. Even though Neeral's primary focus is YardLink and delivering the software that can reduce costs and boost profitability, there is a whole lot more to supply chain management and the benefits that come through the successful implementation of supply chain management technology. So let's take a peek at what these are, shall we? Neeral, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm going to dive straight in to YardLink's expertise and specialism. And can you just explain how digitisation is transforming the construction supply chain and what specific advantages YardLink offers?
Absolutely. Well, if you go back to kind of just generally procurement in construction, we estimate 98% of this is happening completely offline, right?
Okay, wow.
Pen and paper and phone calls. So I guess what that means for a contractor is there's no real source of truth.
Yeah.
Right? There's paperwork everywhere. They need to find it, dig it out. You know, it's he said, she said.
Yeah.
Things go wrong all the time. There's no, I guess, accountability or anywhere someone can point to where there's accountability. Yeah. So what we're aiming to do is digitize the paper trail, essentially, right? Have it all digital, really become YardLink becoming the source of truth for the contractor and the supplier. So we're a marketplace. Right. So we represent the supplier as well as the contractor.
Yeah.
And we're trying to basically digitize all records of a transaction happening, any interactions that have happened between the customer and the supplier, and then making sure that if something does go wrong, there is a source of truth.
Yeah.
Right. So that's essentially what we're doing. And what that means, I think, for the end user, and construction is one of these really interesting industries where the majority, well, a lot of invoices end up going to query.
Okay.
Really? So once something's invoiced, in most industries, you expect to just pay it, right?
Yeah.
Construction, because of this lack of source of truth, you know, did this happen on this time? I didn't get this amount of goods. Like the queries just come up all the time. And it means suppliers get paid very, very late. Customers aren't happy with the service, right? And what we want to do is basically make sure everyone knows what happened. Here's the record. And let's just make everything smooth, between the customer and the supplier.
And it's a little crazy if you think about it, that we don't have that continuity and there is these questions about particularly invoicing and payments and stuff like that. It's a bit mad.
Yeah, absolutely. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, we really think construction's kind of this last industry that needs to be digitized. Manufacturing, logistics, they're already on the way. They're seeking or they're gaining so much productivity out of it.
Yeah.
So much to gain in construction just by these simple things that we can implement, actually that we're taking from other industries as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Learn from things that have already worked, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So there was a stat on your website, and that was 95% of products we help source are delivered within 15 miles of our customers' projects. And this is obviously a major benefit for local economies and things like that. The average is about 60 miles.
That's right. Yeah.
But away from the actual supply chain management
digitization part that you offer. Can you explain some benefits that YardLink has across the supply chain and for your clients?
Yeah. So kind of split this up into two parts. Sorry. We've got the customer, obviously, on one end. We've got the supplier on the other end.
Okay.
For the customer, more and more contractors want to benefit the local economy, work with local suppliers. And what we offer is essentially, the largest network in the UK of suppliers, equipment hire, materials, waste management. We're enabling these contractors to really work with local suppliers. So they're no longer having to source from a supplier they may have had a previous relationship with, miles and miles, 60 miles or more away. We're delivering 5 miles, 2 miles, 15 miles away from the job site. So one, they're saving money because the transport costs are significantly reduced. Yeah. Actually, it's a money saver. Two, they're actually boosting the local economy and they're working with local suppliers. And it's really a win-win. So I'd say, that's a real benefit for the contractor side. On the supplier side, many of these local suppliers actually don't have access to these projects.
Okay.
Right. You need to have worked or been trading for a number of years. You need to have passed certain accreditations. And many times for these local suppliers, it's hard to just get into the door. And get a foot in the door for these contractors. Many contractors want a national supplier, right? They want to work locally, but with a national supplier, right? So we are essentially that front, like we are the national supplier for these contractors, giving access to these local suppliers to work with these contractors. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so
it's really a win-win on all sides.
Yeah, and it just seems to me like a bit of a no-brainer, really.
Yeah,
you're that site that works for both parties and makes it simple.
Exactly. Yeah.
And although the tech is probably hugely complex and, a long way to go in terms of development and places you can take it.
Yeah.
Front facing, simplification, dead easy to use, job done.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the mentality we've had, right? We don't want to reinvent the wheel here. We're not trying to force technology for the sake of technology, right? We really want to give end users an experience they're used to.
Yeah.
And where, like you said, we've got all this complex, intelligent, technology working in the background that is actually doing all the work for them. So,
that's fantastic. Okay. Going to stick with certain things that you've actually reported and stated on your website. Yeah. So a YardLink report surveying senior procurement decision makers in the UK. It was titled "The True Cost of the Construction Supply Chain." Interesting. Cited that just under 3/4 of all respondents are still using manual methods like you highlighted, such as spreadsheets, a pen.
Exactly.
It's crazy. I mean, I don't even write my shopping list with pen and paper anymore.
Yeah.
And they use this to manage procurement and site inventories. It's still crazy stuff. So where are the opportunities within the supply chain to start reducing costs and boosting profitability?
So one of the big areas, when we talk about this true cost of the supply chain, in particular, the true cost of hire. Okay. So we're talking about hire equipment in this case. A lot of contractors, customers will be thinking about the weekly rental price or the hire rate of a piece of equipment. And that's great, right? And they'll be, negotiating this weekly rate and comparing different suppliers. What's missed is the total cost of that hire. A hire has a life cycle on a project. From the day it's delivered to the day it's collected, right? Damage happens, breakdowns happen, downtime happens.
Yeah.
And our job as YardLink is to basically maximize uptime. We don't want to, our mission is to basically minimize downtime at all costs. So, that's what gets hidden, this true cost of hire. Essentially, your cost inflates dramatically as soon as you have downtime because you've got an idle piece of equipment just sitting on the site, right? And this is what is sort of missed, right? So you're negotiating on that weekly rental rate and you may have saved £5 per week, but you're not remembering or you're not realizing actually over the lifetime of this rental, you may have saved that £5 up front, but actually you may be spending an extra thousands because of all the downtime on site. You've got contractors sitting there waiting for work to be done. And if you've got a piece of idle equipment that's broken down, you can't get that work done, right? So it's hugely costly. Yeah.
So a little bit like airlines, I suppose, they want them up in the air. They don't want them sat on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's absolutely right.
So how do you deal with things like, I suppose any issues that might happen or broken equipment. How does that work?
Well, we act as an arbitrator almost, a facilitator. It's a really contentious area.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Because as a supplier, you want to deliver pristine equipment and receive pristine equipment. Ultimately, we're talking about construction. Right?
Yeah.
Stuff gets knocked around, damaged. There's wear and tear. So when equipment goes back, there's, again, this he said, she said mentality.
Exactly.
The supplier may say something got damaged. The contractor might refute that and say, no, it didn't. It arrived like that. And there's no proof of record here, source of truth. So that's like where we come in and try and act as that source of truth. In many cases for contractors, and we found that some suppliers, they may not act truthfully all the time. They may not even know, to be honest, because they themselves may not know the quality of the equipment they delivered in the first place, right? So we try and I guess work for the customer, work for the contractor, and go back to the supplier and say, hey, well, look, we don't think this damage charge is fair. Or the rate you're charging to replace this piece of equipment, again, we don't think is quite fair. Like, we know what the market rates are.
Yeah.
We have a lot of data. So YardLink, as a business, we collect a lot of data to benchmark replacement costs, parts costs, just machinery costs. Right?
Yeah.
So we kind of know where the market is, and that's where we can actually add a lot of value to the customer who doesn't have this information, right? So we save a lot of money for the contractor. And just a lot of time of this back and forth that would typically happen between both parties.
Yeah, exactly. It's even the just he said, she said, and the communications and the dialogue, that's costing money. So anything you can do to reduce that is a win. And with the fact that you just said you're collecting a lot of data, it just highlights the important part you actually play. And the more information and data that you collect, the more jobs that you work on, the easier those disparities become because of all the data that you've had previously.
Absolutely.
Which is huge benefit.
Exactly. Data is super powerful. Really powerful.
Absolutely, for sure. Okay. So moving on a little bit, and this is quite a lengthy preamble, so just bear with me here. According to a report from Statista, since 2020, the amount spent on software within the UK construction has nearly doubled. However, one report highlighted that 31% of senior procurement decision makers stated a lack of digital tools and innovation as their biggest challenge. What advice would you give to construction companies hesitant to adopt digital supply chain solutions and help them out a little bit here? What initial steps should they take to start that transformation?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, we've been at this now for about 5 years, and at first, it was really tough to really try and sell technology and get the adoption going. A lot of pushback, this is a relationship industry, that sort of thing. We found that mentality has changed over the last year or two. So we get a lot more appetite for digital adoption right now. But that being said, there's a lot out there. There are a lot of options out there as well. Yeah. Some good, some bad. All of these projects are also very different, which makes it very hard. There's no cookie cutter approach to many of these projects, right? So every project almost needs something quite different. So you need software that's flexible to the needs of the customer.
Yeah.
I think, and as a customer, it's really just evaluating, can this piece of software, can this software technology really be applied to most use cases that I have? How can I collaborate with other team members, right? So YardLink, as an example, although we're dealing with procurement and the buyer, actually we have so many other stakeholders. We got the site PM, we've got the finance individuals, right, who are all part of this ecosystem of procurement. So it's a matter of how does the software really help us collaborate as a team and work more efficiently, right? And I think it's also just quantifying the savings, right? It's really hard to do. Like, how do you really quantify the saving? It may not only be a pure price exercise or, the price saving on something. Time is actually a huge saving as well. So we found through the research we've done with our customers that we've surveyed is we're saving some customers a day per week on procurement. And it's not only like finding a supplier, it's actually these invoice queries that end up with a typical supply chain, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of these hidden kind of benefits with the software. So I think Well, yeah, evaluating, how flexible is the software? How much can it actually be applied to different stakeholders within the business I'm working with, right? How can it actually flow between site and the head office?
Yeah.
All these things become quite important.
Yeah, and there's so many benefits. And I came across YardLink this time last year at Digital Construction Week, and I kind of followed it broadly like ever since. And so I'm a big fan of it, to be fair. I think it's really, really good tech, and the way it's growing and developing.
Yeah.
I think it's one part of construction that from a technology perspective and that supply chain, it's almost missed. It's easy to overlook it. Like you said, 'cause it's quite hard to quantify it because people haven't looked to quantify it and how much time things like that can save them.
One of the other things I'd say just on that point is, and it's mind-boggling that most of the customers, and we're talking about large contractors, for example, here, rarely actually measure the performance of their supply chain.
Yeah.
Right? Suppliers we find are maybe not willing to give some of that information. Contractors just not measuring it. So that's something we provide as well. So we have SLAs in place. But these are the kind of tools that actually are so much, just make the function that much more powerful.
Yeah.
Transparent as well. And it's also something to just show the rest of the organization.
Yeah.
Procurement is actually working.
Yeah.
Whatever division it may be, right? Whatever the software pertains to.
Yeah, because procurement touches so many different, like you said, so many different divisions in the organization. Okay, so doing a bit of research for this chat, and in a recent interview with Just Entrepreneurs, I'm going to quote you here. You mentioned that developments in tech in construction means that procurement will become a smoother process and one that is cheaper and more sustainable as a result. Most decisions will soon be driven by data analytics. Okay. With this in mind, how in the future will YardLink stay relevant and ahead of the competition that's likely to enter the market?
Good question. There's a few angles here that we could discuss. The one major angle, we're a marketplace ultimately.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to build here are network effects, right? So from the perspective of having, the vast number of suppliers that we have, we're building more and more suppliers to our database. The more users, the more suppliers we have, actually, the more benefit comes to all members of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one. So that's a moat we're developing, or a competitive advantage, I'd say. And then the other piece we touched on is data, really, really capturing a lot of information that was otherwise never collected in the, pricing data. What is a market rate? No one really knows.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So what is a market rate? YardLink can actually be the source of truth, or, the source of truth on pricing, for example. What is the true cost of replacement for a machine of XH, right? Like YardLink can actually become that source of truth or that data point. Where are all the projects that are happening and live right now? Where can we actually share assets that would otherwise be underutilized on one side and actually required on a site that's just 2 miles away, right? There's so many data points that we can use to just create a much more efficient, streamlined, and just transparent ecosystem for all.
That sounds so exciting. really.
Honestly, it's super exciting. There's so much more to do here. Like, such early days here. It's still really early days, but really excited. Yeah,
absolutely. We started off by saying it's a marketplace. It's and on the front facing, absolutely. But there's so much more, and there's so many benefits, and so many places you can take it and benefit your clients. That it's superb. Okay, finally from me, we're at Digital Construction Week, second day. Give us your thoughts. What's it been like for you?
We've done a few exhibitions. This is our second time at Digital Construction Week, and honestly, it's a great event. We found it the most beneficial for our business. And, apart from trying to meet procurement, for us, obviously, we want to meet buyers.
Yeah.
Actually, what's really interesting was we're meeting other stakeholders within these businesses.
Okay.
The IT departments, the technology folks, right? Who have a different angle.
Yeah.
And actually might see a lot more benefit from what we're doing than maybe the buyer will initially.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So I think that's super interesting. And then the other point is we are a marketplace. So the supply side is also interesting to us. And we're seeing a lot of innovation here.
Yeah.
Different types of technology being adopted, new types of equipment, coming to market. And as YardLink, we want to present all this new technology, these new options to customers as well. So we're meeting a lot of great suppliers, great contractors as well.
Yeah.
It's just, great place to be, man.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Look, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute
Thank you.
pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to seeing where YardLink goes
Really
next.
enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.